and gentlemen, we got that beautiful, they call it the witching hours happening. And it is time, so please welcome to stage one of the founders of Legion M, Terry Luberoff, ladies and gentlemen.
That is too tall for me. So Stan Lee died on November 12th, 2018. It was one day after Veterans Day. He was a very proud World War II veteran who believed in tolerance, equality, and the power of dreams. As I think about Stan Lee, I think about President John F. Kennedy remembering Veterans Day in these immortal words. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. I am honored to introduce a man who I think embodies that very sentiment. Someone who loves and appreciates his fans the way Stan Lee did. Someone who lives by a moral code that embodies what it means to be human, compassionate, and caring. Someone who also believes in following our dreams and never letting anyone ever say no. I am proud to introduce our host for the evening, actor, writer, producer, director, friend of Stan Lee, and fellow hero, Kevin Smith.
Hey, everybody! How fortunate for all of us to be able to gather right here at Groman's, here in the courtyard, where it feels like a year and change ago we were standing up there and Stan was standing and addressing a card. Man, really, the crowd, magical day. This is a celebration, folks. Yes, we're marking the passing of a great man, but today we're here to celebrate what his life meant. A long time ago, there was a man born who grew up to tell stories that were the moral foundations of everything I built my life upon. And that's weird because I was raised Catholic, but that stuff didn't really register with me as much as Stan's teaching. Stan was a man who told simple stories about the worst thing in the world happening and everybody running away from it, wisely, sensibly. But in the midst of that, it's always a handful of people dressed very colorfully, heading right into it, heading toward danger. Those are the stories that the man told. He helped us all build our morality, man. He taught us right from wrong while entertaining us. Like, look, church tries to teach you right from wrong every Sunday. Stan did it, we all listened. We don't listen in church, man. So, like, he obviously knew how to talk to a crowd. I met him years ago. 23 years I knew him by the time he passed, which is weird. I knew him before I met him because I read the books, I'd read the bullpen, I'd read Stan's soapbox. I knew his voice before I ever first heard it, and the first time I ever heard it was on the TV news. He was being interviewed, and my father went to pull me from my bedroom. He goes, come out here. Come out here. The guy who did Spider-Man is on TV. And this was like in the late 70s, early 80s. Nowadays, you can see comic book people on TV and whatnot as part of the mainstream. But this was at a time where that wasn't going on. And my father, who was not a comic book guy, was so impressed. He was like, that's him. That's the one that made Spider-Man. So I saw him, younger Stan Lee, heard his voice. It sounded exactly like it did on the page. He was that familiar. Then I grew up listening to him in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Then I grew up one day and got into film, and I'd written a part in Mallrats for a comic book guru type of guy to talk to the main character, Brody. He gave the script to Jim Jacks, who was a producer on the movie, and he said, who is this meant to be? I was like, the comic book guru? It's kind of like, you know, like Stan Lee, if like Stan Lee was in the movie. And Jim Jacks was like, why don't we just get Stan Lee? And I was like, I don't know Stan Lee. He's like, well, I do. And I was like, Hollywood is fucking good, man. These people know each other and stuff. So I rewrote the scenes for Stan, and I gave it to Jim. He gave it to Stan because they were friends. They would eat together at Dan Tana's all the time. So then afterwards, I spoke to Jim at night. I said, what'd he say? And he goes, oh, it was a great conversation. He was very flattered. I said, what'd he really say? And he said, well, I gave him the pages, and he goes, you really want to know what he said? I said, yeah. He goes, first thing out of his mouth, he goes, Jim, I would never say this shit. And I explained to him he wouldn't be playing himself, but a version of himself. And he's into it, but he has one thing that he would like to ask you before he says yes. And I was like, okay, when do we do that? And he's like, he's going to call you. And I was like, Stan Lee's going to call me? Stan Lee called me and I heard his voice on the phone. Hey, this is Stan Lee. I said, I know who this is, man. How are you? And he's like, so good. Thank you for thinking of me. I would love to do this. I got one problem. I said, go ahead. He goes, in the script, you have me talking to your main character about the one that got away, a girl that I loved that actually got away, and it's bittersweet and it makes sense for your story. He's going, problem is, there is no one that got away. I've been with the one for 50 years, that's Joni, and if I go into a movie and say one got away, I'm gonna get home and that one ain't gonna let me in. So, is there any way we can change it so that I can do what you need me to do in the movie, but then afterwards I could say, I was only kidding. I said, absolutely, we'll include a scene where you talk to his buddy afterwards and say, it was all a joke, and that way you'll keep your marriage intact. And he was like, then I'm in. And so he showed up on set in Minnesota, and I met him for the first time, face to face. And he was everything that you hoped he would be. He was everything you dreamed he would be, and he stayed that way, ladies and gentlemen, for 23 years. There was never a moment where I was disappointed by the humanity of Stan Lee, where he let me down, where I was like, oh man, well I guess he's not a god after all. He was perfection all the way through. Every time I saw him, he had a huge smile for me and stuff. And after like the first year, he remembered my name all the time. So I'd be like, hey Stan, he'd be like, hey Kevin, how are you? And if I was with Jason Mewes, who plays Jade in My Silent Bob, he never remembered his name. And I loved it. So he'd be like, hey Kev, hey you know. Oh, he was the absolute best. And we're here to celebrate him tonight out here in the courtyard where he put his very feet and handprints only over a year and change ago. And then inside later on and stuff. It's going to be a magical, magical night to send off our Generalissimo, the man responsible for all the imaginations that we kind of share.